13 years ago, Craig and I were new to the area, and we decided to start our family, and we had a little girl named Taylor. We were delighted to have a little girl, and we started to notice that there were some things about her that were different than the other babies. About 6 months, I talked to my physician and said, I think there's something different about my child. Finally, at 11 months old, she was diagnosed with Tay-Sachs disease, which is a neurodegenerative disease. And she wasn't expected to live beyond about 4 years of age. And as you can imagine, that was devastating for our family.
Our lives were on hold at that time. And all we could focus on was taking the best care of Taylor and starting a family with Tyler.
We had no idea what to do with a child that had a terminal illness, and we were lost. And we didn't have a lot of friends in the area because we were new to town. We both had very active careers, and so we felt very isolated. And we tried to think, who should we reach out to? Several friends and physicians said you might want to touch base with hospice. And I always thought that you didn't go to hospice until you were at the very end of life, the last 6 months of life. And I learned that we have a very unique hospice here in Greensboro. And we learned this by meeting with families all across the country, and we would share experiences and talk about what our hospice was providing for us. And we learned that most people who had children with our disease or similar diseases did not get any support from hospice. In fact, they didn't know how to care for children, and if they did, they wouldn't accept the child until the last 6 months of life. But our hospice embraced us immediately. The program was called Kids Path, and we learned that it was very unique for the United States. And we immediately had a nurse that was assigned to us. We had the option of working with a chaplain. We were put in contact with other programs in the community that would provide financial support, would provide physical therapy support, and we just found that our hospice was very receptive to us, and we felt very fortunate.
I was a corporate pilot in those days, and I would be gone for 4 or 5 days at a time, and sometimes up to 2 weeks to 10 days. And Taylor's care and her treatment was such that, you know, I could be gone and not have to worry about what was going on at home.
And as Taylor's disease progressed, of course we saw hospice a lot more, but I wondered at the very beginning why we saw hospice so much, because we really didn't need that much help early on in her illness. And finally, the hospice nurse explained to me that they wanted to really get to know us and Taylor, so that when we were at a critical stage with her illness, they would feel that they were part of our family, which they certainly were, and that they would know how to best advise us. Over the next year of her life, we saw her lose pretty much all of her abilities. She lost her eyesight, she lost the ability to control her movements, her arms, her legs. Her sucking and swallowing abilities were greatly diminished, and so she never said mom or dad. She really never said a word.
One of the things that helped get me through was the planning of a boat, and we happened to name the boat Little Miss Magic after a little Jimmy Buffett song, and that song talks about mustaches turning gray and ceiling fans, how children like to look at the ceiling fan as it turns. And anyway, in those days I had a mustache, and it's gone because it did turn gray. And anyway, I would let Taylor touch my mustache. When I'd come back from a trip after being gone for a while, I would rub her hand across that mustache, and that would the way that she would recognize that it was me. Kind of a void, you know. She passed away in our bed. And, hospice was the first people that we called. What do we do now?
I think it was very hard for families that didn't have that support and the access to medical people to talk about some of the issues. It really did. It's been 10 years since Taylor's passed away, And I finally feel like our family is in a place where we can focus on trying to give more back to hospice. Hospice gave so much to us, and very little of what hospice provided to us was covered by our insurance, which I couldn't believe. It made me very angry that here we had such a crisis situation and our very good insurance company covered very little. And hospice never bothered us to pay any bills or make good on any of the expenses that our insurance wouldn't cover, and I found that phenomenal. But I think they were so sensitive to all of the hurt and pain that we were going through that they didn't want to further burden us. And now I feel that our family is in a strong position to try to give back to hospice. And I also think that hospice is an entity that very few understand in the community. It's all about celebrating life. It's all about happiness in a family with that loved one that is in a critical care situation.